I want to touch real quick on the concept of who am I? There's a couple different answers for that depending on the level of your spirituality. There is a thing within us, our mind, it's called an ego, that has been built over so many years. It is the part of you that looks outside of itself and says, this is what I perceive and this is what I see, and based on these things and others, doing a comparative kind of search, this is what quote unquote I am. It'll look at a concept like your occupation, or in my case, a man, an aging man, you can tell. But it looks at those characteristics and it builds an identity based off of those things. But those are all exterior characteristics that the ego uses. Now the ego, again, part of the mind, it's a construct of the mind. And so it's built an entire library of everything that it's experienced over your lifetime. Extensive files, as they would say in the Terminator. I have extensive files. But it does have extensive files, and every time you come up against a new situation, it goes back in the files and it starts searching for things that are relevant, things that are like that. And you make a judgment based off of that assessment from your ego. So the ego you is what you could say in your everyday life. I'm a white man. I work in construction. All these traits that are obvious to everybody. I like chocolate cake. I dislike these things. All these things. This is all part of your ego. But once you get to a certain portion of spirituality, and you start to understand another concept called the self, and I came to understand that through understanding Eastern religions. The self, or the Atman, is the spirit you that dwells within this body. This body is an avatar, whereas the ego looks at this body as being you. This body is me. It looks in the mirror and says, hey, that's you. Well, the self looks at the spirit you and says, no, the body is not you. The spirit you is you. And that spirit came from spirit, came here, inhabited this body like an avatar. And that is the true you. So as you go through life trying to figure out who am I, you need to take a look at which aspect of who am I looking at. Am I looking at the ego you that's built through the mind and all the experiences in this incarnation? Or are you looking at the spirit you, that part of your innermost being that came from heaven, I guess, another dimension? This is the way we look at it, right? So your spirit you came from, quote unquote, God to here, and came into this body. Without the body, or without the spirit, the body is lifeless. It's not animated. The spirit is what animates this body, right? So in that respect, life down here in this body, this is the illusion, because that spirit came from a place where it lives forever. That's reality. And what we're experiencing here is nothing short of the illusion. And another aspect regarding the ego mind versus the spirit is in trying to understand the thoughts that you're having. Where are these thoughts coming from? Because now you've got to try to distinguish that voice in your head. Is the voice in your head coming from your carnal mind or your ego, or is that voice coming from my spirit? The spirit is a little harder to discern. We got to listen to it. It's a small, still voice, but as you become more spiritual, you need to learn to discern about the thoughts that you're having, whether or not those are quote unquote egoic thoughts, or if they have originated in spirit, because the spirit's going to try to lead you, and the spirit is going to have to wrestle away, I don't want to say control, but control over your mind. Now that you've opened up your heart, the heart now is going to try to start ruling what the thoughts are. And that's a place where your mind already rules. And so your mind doesn't want to give up that control very easily. And so you fight between yourself saying, about these thoughts, about, where is this thought coming from? Sometimes a thought will just pop into your head and you'll be like, well, where did that come from? That's where you need to discern, should I grab a hold of that thought and run with it, or should I throw it out? So when we're talking about the ego versus the spirit, this is one of the other aspects that we need to analyze and figure out, what aspect of me, of myself, am I speaking to now? Because as I said, until you've started to understand the difference between these two, between spirit and between flesh, your mind, your ego, you didn't even know that this wrestling for control of your thoughts was even going on. So now you have to train your mind to discern what's coming from my heart, where spirit resides, what's coming from my brain, where ego resides. It's a very important distinction to make, and it takes some training to figure it out. Anyway, interesting concepts to think of. Have a good day.